Carl Jung unveiled a profound truth. Society's deepest fear isn't the criminal, the rebel, or the outspoken activist. It is the person we label lazy, the quiet soul who secretly harbors world-changing ambitions. Jung spent decades delving into the lives of these enigmatic individuals, unearthing a revelation that shatters our conventional understanding of human potential and achievement. The lazy genius appears to do nothing, yet their ideas possess the power to reshape entire industries. They seem unmotivated, but their visions burn brighter, more ambitious than anyone around them. Today, we peel back the layers of Jung's most controversial theory, exploring why these individuals, perhaps even you, stir such unease in those around them. Because what Jung discovered wasn't merely a personality type, it was undeniable evidence that our entire paradigm of success might be fundamentally flawed. By the end of this journey, you will recognize why the person often dismissed as lazy might, in fact, be operating from the highest echelons of human consciousness, and why this truth threatens the very bedrock of what society believes about true accomplishment. Jung's clinical practice laid bare a startling pattern that forever altered his perception of human achievement. He meticulously documented case after case of individuals who, to the casual observer, seemed idle, yet possessed insights so profound they left him speechless. These were not your typical underachievers. They embodied what we can call effortless depth, an innate ability to perceive solutions others overlooked, to grasp connections that eluded conventional thought, and to envision possibilities deemed impossible by the status quo. Yet, paradoxically, they often struggled with basic productivity systems. Jung's observations painted a picture of minds operating like vast, living libraries, while their physical forms remained frustratingly still. What's truly fascinating is how society often sees only the stillness, dismissing the boundless wisdom held within that unread library. But this isn't even the most unsettling part. Jung realized these individuals weren't broken or unmotivated. They were accessing something that our relentless productivity culture actively stifles and destroys in most people. The pattern was unmistakable. Brilliant insights coupled with apparent inaction, revolutionary ideas coupled with a gentle resistance to conventional methods of achievement. And what Jung uncovered about their minds will truly awaken you. Here's the profound truth Jung brought to light. What we casually term lazy geniuses are, in Jungian terms, visionary creatives. These are individuals who tap into what he called autonomous, self-activating processes stemming from the unconscious mind. Jung drew a crucial distinction between two types of creative individuals: the psychological artist, who draws from personal, conscious experiences, and the visionary artist, who serves as a living vessel for the collective unconscious. The lazy genius, in essence, belongs to this second, more mysterious category. They are not consciously forcing ideas. They are receiving them, like an antenna tuning into a universal broadcast. Jung observed that genuine creativity doesn't originate from the conscious ego, but from the boundless depths of the unconscious. What appears as laziness is, in fact, the mind intelligently creating optimal conditions for what Jung termed a spontaneous outpouring of archetypal images and motifs from the collective unconscious. This elegantly explains why so-called lazy geniuses often experience their most brilliant epiphanies during moments others deem unproductive. A quiet walk, a long shower, a moment of daydreaming. They are not forcing conscious thought. They are simply allowing unconscious processes to emerge naturally, precisely as Jung meticulously documented in his groundbreaking studies of visionary creativity. But here's the secret Jung unearthed that the gurus of productivity might not want you to know, a truth that grows even more controversial. Jung realized that the existence of lazy geniuses proves that productivity culture might not just be unnecessary, but actively counterproductive for certain higher forms of intelligence. If truly profound insights spring from unconscious processing rather than sheer conscious effort, then everything society teaches us about achievement comes into question. The lazy genius stands as living proof that perhaps the hardest workers aren't always the most valuable contributors. This realization can spark what we might call productivity anxiety, a disquieting awareness that our constant busyness might be less effective than someone else's profound, quiet inactivity. Jung's studies powerfully suggest that highly productive individuals often fear the lazy genius because they embody the truth that effortless insight can profoundly surpass effortful labor. This truth threatens the very foundation upon which the productive person has meticulously built their identity and sense of self-worth. But hold on, for there is something Jung discovered that is far more disturbing than mere social fear. He later articulated this torment. I was living in a constant state of tension. Often I felt as if gigantic blocks of stone were tumbling down upon me. For 6 long, agonizing years, Jung dwelled in this psychological hell. He was unable to function normally. He couldn't trust his own perceptions, feeling perpetually torn apart from within by forces he neither understood nor could control. Here's a simple invitation, what we call Jung's 5-minute recognition test. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Sit quietly, without any stimulation, no phone, no music, no task, no distractions. Just observe what unfolds in your mind. For the lazy genius, ideas, solutions, or profound insights often begin to emerge naturally. Your mind starts weaving connections without any conscious effort. For the typical productive person, anxiety often builds. There's a compelling urge to do something, to fill the silence, which feels uncomfortable and wasteful. Within the shadow, that realm of the psyche where rejected and unacknowledged parts reside, he found not darkness in the malevolent sense, but what we call forbidden selfishness, the natural, inherent self-advocacy, the healthy ego strength that was cruelly deemed unacceptable in the vulnerability of childhood. But that's not even the wildest part of what Jung discovered. If you've ever been branded lazy despite harboring immense dreams, let this be your mantra. My mind works differently, and that is my strength. Jung pinpointed precisely why society often responds to lazy geniuses with such palpable hostility. They represent everything that productivity, culture, in its fear, tries to deny about human nature. Modern productivity ideology rests on one fundamental belief: human value is intrinsically linked to measurable output. The lazy genius doesn't just challenge this system. They threaten to dismantle it entirely by demonstrating that the most valuable contributions often arise from immeasurable processes. What we might call the productivity shadow, inspired by Jung's shadow work, represents society's unconscious terror that perhaps human worth isn't determined by how busy someone appears, but by the depth of their being and the resonance of their insights. But here's the astonishing insight that changes everything. Jung's most shocking discovery wasn't merely theoretical. He meticulously documented how visionary creatives access what he called primordial images from the collective unconscious, translating universal, transpersonal content into insights that resonate across all humanity. Jung observed that these individuals act as living mediums, channeling archetypal patterns that exist far beyond personal experience. This was not mystical thinking. Jung documented specific cases where visionary creatives produced works containing symbols and themes they had never consciously encountered, yet which appeared across cultures and throughout history. What we can call the primordial download pattern reveals how lazy geniuses tap into the same archetypal layer that Jung identified in visionary artists. While others toil away, relying solely on personal conscious knowledge, lazy geniuses effortlessly tap into what Jung called the universal transpersonal layer of the psyche. Jung realized that this profound process cannot be forced through conscious effort. The individual must become what he termed a vessel, creating sacred space for unconscious content to emerge naturally, like a quiet stream breaking through the earth. This explains precisely why lazy geniuses instinctively resist productivity systems that rely on conscious, ego-driven effort. The old version of himself, the version that had strived relentlessly to live up to Freud's formidable expectations, to conform to society's relentless demands, and to fulfill his own ego's insatiable desires, that version had to die. It had to be shed so that his authentic, true self could finally be born, unburdened and free. Consider Einstein's laziness. His colleagues often criticized him for spending hours lost in daydreaming instead of dutifully working on assignments. Yet, his revolutionary theories of relativity emerged precisely during these apparently unproductive periods of deep contemplation. Or Tesla's impracticality. He was often considered lazy because he preferred profound mental experimentation to hands-on physical labor. His visualization techniques, which seemed like mere idleness, produced inventions others couldn't even fathom. And Darwin's delay. He was openly mocked for taking decades to finally publish his theory of evolution. His apparent procrastination was, in fact, a period of intense, unconscious processing that ensured his monumental ideas could withstand any scrutiny. But here's what makes this pattern even more incredible. Jung meticulously documented exactly how this process works through his theory of creativity as a play instinct. He wrote, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity." This is the authentic Jungian principle that illuminates lazy genius behavior. What society often misinterprets as mere laziness is, in truth, what Jung called the play instinct, the mind's natural, sophisticated creative mechanism that operates through fantasy and imagination rather than forced intellectual effort. But Jung discovered that this very act of suppression creates profound psychological fragility. When you reject and disown significant parts of yourself, you become, by definition, incomplete. And incomplete people, much like a bridge with missing girders, break far more easily under pressure. They are fighting a debilitating war on two fronts, against the relentless challenges of the external world, and, far more exhausting, against their own disowned, fragmented nature. It emerges from what he called inner necessity, an autonomous, self-organizing drive that operates according to its own unconscious rhythms, entirely independent of conscious productivity demands. Your authentic, vibrant self is trying desperately to be born, but its arrival necessitates the courageous dismantling of the false self, the elaborate edifice that was meticulously constructed around serving others. This is precisely where Jung's concept of the transcendent function becomes not just crucial, but a guiding light. The transcendent function is the psyche's miraculous ability to bridge and integrate seemingly opposing forces. In this case, the deeply caring self and the equally vital self-caring self. What we can call Jung's collective intelligence theory suggests that human consciousness exists in multiple layers, with most people only ever accessing surface-level individual thinking. Lazy geniuses, however, naturally connect to deeper collective layers, where humanity's accumulated wisdom resides. While productive people diligently work within existing systems, lazy geniuses access insights that transcend current limitations. Their apparent laziness is, in fact, consciousness operating at a collective, rather than merely individual level. Building on Jung's profound work, we believe the lazy genius thinks with humanity's mind, not just their own. Their insights serve collective evolution, not merely personal advancement. This is precisely why their ideas often seem impossibly advanced for their time. They are echoing a future that is not yet fully visible. Become a keen observer of your own reactions. Pay close attention to what ignites an irrational, disproportionate anger or intense irritation within you when you encounter it in other people. The very traits that make your blood boil in others are, more often than not, direct reflections of your own disowned shadow qualities. For example, do you despise people you perceive as selfish? Your shadow likely contains suppressed needs and desires, a yearning for self-care, for boundaries, that you have never allowed yourself to fully acknowledge or express. Too much social engagement can disrupt their vital unconscious access, but too little engagement prevents their transformative insights from ever reaching others. Jung developed 3 powerful integration strategies. Strategy 1. Rhythm protection. Lazy geniuses must identify and fiercely protect their natural energy cycles, even when society pressures them to conform to conventional schedules. Strategy 2. Selective collaboration. Rather than attempting to work with everyone, they must find the rare, enlightened individuals who can truly appreciate and support their unconventional approaches. Strategy 3. Translation skills. They must learn to translate their profound unconscious insights into a language that productive people can understand and act upon. But Jung discovered something that makes this integration even more crucial for humanity's future. Jung's groundbreaking insight was that you can actually engage in profound, conscious conversations with these disowned parts of yourself. Find a quiet, undisturbed space, close your eyes, and vividly imagine the quality you dislike most about yourself, or that which triggers you most in others, as a separate, distinct person or entity, sitting directly across from you. Give it a form, a voice. Then, with an open heart and genuine curiosity, ask this shadow figure profound questions. What do you truly want? What vital message are you desperately trying to convey to me? Your most brilliant ideas consistently arrive during activities others consider unproductive. Showering, walking in nature, daydreaming, or simply lying quietly in bed. Sign 3. Energy unpredictability. Your most productive periods rarely match normal schedules. You might feel utterly useless at 9 a.m., but brilliantly alive and inspired at midnight. Sign 4. Confidence without proof. You possess an unwavering belief in ideas others consider unrealistic, not because you can logically prove them, but because they feel true at levels far deeper than mere logic. Step 3. Conscious integration. Jung acutely observed that empaths often treat their own needs as entirely optional, easily dismissed, while meticulously treating the needs of others as mandatory, non-negotiable obligations. This creates what Jung identified as a fundamental, often painful, conflict. The genius operates from eternal, universal perspectives, while society demands temporal, individual productivity. The lazy genius isn't truly lazy. They are heroically struggling to bridge 2 completely different levels of consciousness. Jung observed that this process is often deeply disturbing and intrusive, both to the individual visionary and to society itself. The genius cannot simply turn off their connection to archetypal content, even when it makes them appear unproductive or impractical to others. You can feel profound compassion without absorbing, like a sponge, every ounce of pain. You can offer unwavering support without taking on the entire burden of responsibility. You can love with an open heart without disappearing into the shadows of another's needs. Jung understood that the highest, most impactful form of service to the world emanates from individuals who have meticulously done their own profound psychological work. The very ruthless energy that had once filled him with guilt became the unstoppable force that empowered him to challenge established psychological theories, to break free from intellectual dogma, and to create entirely new, transformative approaches to understanding the human mind. If you've discovered that tending to your own garden makes you a better, more vibrant helper to others, you now understand the power of giving from overflow, not emptiness. Jung famously wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For empaths, this includes the brave acceptance of those parts of themselves that yearn for recognition, for much-needed rest, for genuine reciprocity, and for profound respect. All the elemental human desires they were painstakingly taught were selfish to even contemplate. Jung made a profound observation about the beautiful, yet sometimes turbulent, transformation that occurs in empaths' relationships when they begin to courageously practice sacred selfishness. He termed it relational recalibration, the organic, inevitable process, where relationships either deepen significantly through mutual authenticity and respect, or they gently, or sometimes abruptly, end because their very foundation was built upon the empath's prior self-abandonment. They can offer genuine, unwavering support without taking ownership of outcomes or feeling compelled to fix everything. Jung observed that when empaths courageously cease playing these functional, often draining, roles, some individuals experience what we call supply withdrawal. They might react with anger, subtle manipulation, or cutting accusations precisely because their emotional needs are no longer being automatically and effortlessly met. It is a dynamic, direct dialogue with your unconscious mind, a deliberate opening that allows you to access deep wisdom, profound healing, and transformative insights that your conscious, rational mind simply cannot provide on its own. It's like tapping into an ancient, internal oracle. Here's what unfolded for Jung. As his breakdown intensified, he began experiencing recurring visions of a wise old man, a benevolent figure who would appear and offer cryptic, yet profoundly insightful guidance. Instead of dismissing these powerful experiences as mere hallucinations or symptoms of his unraveling mind, Jung made a courageous choice. He began actively engaging with this figure in conscious conversation. This wise old man, whom Jung later named Philemon, became his indispensable internal guide, illuminating the treacherous labyrinth of his psychological collapse. Through their profound dialogues, Jung gleaned insights that no amount of purely rational analysis or external consultation could ever have provided. He realized that active imagination was far more than a coping mechanism. It was a direct, living pipeline to the innate, healing intelligence of his unconscious mind. And critically, he understood that anyone navigating a psychological breaking point could learn to harness this transformative technique. Learning to discern the subtle yet crucial differences requires developing what Jung termed psychological discernment, the clear-eyed ability to perceive people as they authentically are, rather than as you might wish them to be. The individuated empath, having reclaimed their wholeness, naturally attracts a different caliber of people than the self-abandoning empath. They draw those who are also courageously engaged in their own profound psychological work, rather than those who are passively seeking someone to do that work for them. Jung observed that this magnificent shift can initially feel profoundly lonely, precisely because the empath is bravely breaking powerful, often multi-generational, patterns of codependency. Jung foresaw that as more empaths integrate their shadow and reclaim their sovereignty, society itself would be compelled to evolve toward healthier, more authentic relationship dynamics. He called this collective individuation through empath integration. This is the beacon effect. Integrated empaths become luminous, living examples for others who are drowning in their own boundless compassion, proving unequivocally that it is possible to maintain deep empathy while fiercely protecting your sacred energy. Simply allow images, words, sensations, or feelings to surface naturally, like bubbles rising to the surface of a still pond. The integrated empath possesses what Jung called conscious empathy, the magnificent ability to feel deeply with others, to truly understand, without ever losing their own precious sense of self in the process. They have masterfully learned to wield their sensitivity as a powerful, insightful tool, rather than being unwittingly used or overwhelmed by it. Jung identified several distinct characteristics of psychological integration that apply with profound specificity to empaths. First, emotional choice, the empowering capacity to consciously decide when, how, and how much to feel with others. Jung deeply understood that healthy empathy possesses an inner on-off switch, controlled by conscious will and discernment, rather than an automatic, draining response. Second, compassionate detachment, the profound ability to care deeply without carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. Jung observed that the most truly helpful and effective people maintain what he called a loving distance, close enough to offer genuine support and connection, yet far enough away to maintain clear perspective, wisdom, and their own well-being. Third, reciprocal relationships, connections where empathy flows freely and abundantly in both directions. Jung noted that integrated empaths naturally attract individuals who are also capable of giving and receiving in equal measure, creating what he beautifully called mutual individuation, a dance of shared growth. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The integrated empath has magnificently achieved this by learning that their truest, most powerful self encompasses both their boundless capacity for compassion and their inherent, non-negotiable right to self-preservation. This profound integration creates what Jung termed earned security, a deep, unwavering inner stability that is entirely independent of others' approval or fleeting emotional states. The integrated empath can courageously witness others' pain without absorbing it into their own being, offer unwavering support without taking on undue responsibility, and love with an open, free heart, without ever losing themselves in the process. Jung understood that this elevated level of integration serves the greater collective good. If your inner wisdom reveals that your crippling anxiety is actually protecting you from remaining in a relationship that is fundamentally harmful or inauthentic, you must listen to that guidance and act upon it with conviction. It demands the courage to face the shadow, the wisdom to integrate opposites, and the unwavering choice of wholeness over fleeting approval. If you've learned to help others without hurting yourself, you are now a conscious empath. The pain you feel is not death, Sarah. It is the agonizing, necessary birth. This profound insight helped Sarah to completely reframe her entire experience. Instead of viewing herself as a helpless victim of circumstances, she began to see her divorce as a necessary, even sacred, destruction that was creating pristine, fertile space for her authentic, unburdened self to triumphantly emerge. Jung employed active imagination throughout his entire breakdown, accessing guidance and understanding that his rational mind, no matter how brilliant, simply could not provide. This technique did not merely help him survive his psychological collapse. It helped him profoundly understand that his breakdown was, in fact, a spiritual and psychological initiation. Through active imagination, Jung learned to perceive his intense suffering not as meaningless pain, but as a sacred, alchemical process of psychological death and rebirth. Most importantly, Jung discovered that integrated empaths serve an essential, often understated, function for collective psychological evolution. While others may still participate in extractive relationship patterns, you, as a sovereign empath, model what healthy, reciprocal love actually looks like. You are not broken for feeling overwhelmed by others' emotions. You are not selfish for desiring and demanding reciprocal relationships. You are not too sensitive for this world. On the contrary, this world desperately needs empaths who profoundly understand and embody their intrinsic worth. Your journey from emotional absorption to conscious empathy isn't merely personal healing. It is, in its essence, revolutionary. You become living proof that sensitivity and strength can not only coexist, but flourish together. You demonstrate that boundaries and love are not opposites, but interdependent facets of true connection. You embody the truth that caring for others does not, and should not, require disappearing from your own vibrant life. Once you truly understand that your empathy was, at its core, a brilliant survival strategy, you gain the unprecedented power to consciously choose. You can keep it as it is, or you can profoundly transform it. Individuation is the sacred odyssey from the person you think you should be. The roles, the expectations, the masks, to the glorious revelation of who you actually are, in your most essential, unvarnished truth. And Jung discovered that this monumental journey almost invariably begins with a crisis so devastating, so utterly profound, that it forces you to question every single thing you thought you knew about yourself, your life, and your place in the world. During his own breakdown, Jung realized that his psychological collapse was not a malfunction, not an error in the system. It was his psyche's fierce, urgent way of rejecting a life that had become far too small, too constricting, for his expansive, authentic self. The version of himself that had striven tirelessly to please Freud, to meticulously meet society's rigid expectations, and to conform to narrow professional standards, that version had to utterly die, so that his true, unbound nature could finally emerge, vibrant and free. Jung observed that this profound transformation often triggers what he called existential guilt, the deep-seated feeling that you are somehow betraying your essential nature by daring to change. It's the insistent voice in your head that whispers, "But I've always been the helper," or "People depend on me," or the most terrifying, "What if no one loves me if I'm not useful?" Yet, Jung understood this guilt as the final, tenacious resistance of the false self, the identity that was meticulously constructed around serving others. Here's how individuation, through the crucible of crisis, truly works. You were never meant to be a perpetual emotional caretaker for the entire world. You were meant to be a conscious, sovereign individual who courageously chooses when and how to offer your unique, magnificent gifts. Your empathy was always destined to be a superpower, an extraordinary force for good, not a silent, crushing burden. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For empaths, this includes the radical, liberating acceptance that they have every right to exist fully, completely, and unapologetically without constantly needing to prove their inherent worth through relentless service to others. This profound acceptance creates what Jung called psychological sovereignty, the empowering recognition that you are the ultimate, undeniable authority on your own inner experience. No one else can dictate what you should feel, what you should give, or who you should be. That power resides solely within you. Jung observed that empaths who courageously achieve this sovereignty often embark upon what he called the reparenting phase, a deeply healing journey of learning to give themselves the unconditional acceptance, love, and validation they never fully received as children. They learn to speak to themselves with profound kindness, to fiercely prioritize their own essential needs, and to joyfully celebrate their own hard-won achievements. This internal reparenting is utterly crucial because Jung understood that you simply cannot give from an empty well indefinitely. The empath who bravely learns to nurture and replenish themselves becomes magnificently capable of authentic, sustainable nurturing of others, giving from a place of boundless overflow. Jung also noted that psychological sovereignty often involves a necessary grieving for the unlived life, mourning all the dreams, goals, and cherished experiences you perhaps sacrificed or set aside to keep others comfortable and content. You might profoundly realize you chose careers, relationships, and entire life paths based on what others needed, rather than what your own soul truly yearned for. Individuation demands that you courageously allow certain cherished, yet ultimately limiting, aspects of your identity to die. This includes the people-pleasing version of yourself, the one that constantly seeks external validation, the version that is paralyzed by the fear of disappointing others. This psychological death is undeniably terrifying, for it feels, profoundly, like you are losing yourself, like you are disintegrating into nothingness. But Jung realized a vital truth. You are not losing your true self. You are, in fact, shedding the suffocating limitations, the self-imposed prisons that have been relentlessly preventing you from becoming your deepest, most authentic self. During his breakdown, Jung had to bravely let go of his identity as Freud's chosen successor, his intense need for professional approval, and his paralyzing fear of being perceived as unconventional or isolated. These deaths felt devastatingly painful, but they created the vast, necessary space for his authentic, revolutionary identity to finally emerge, unburdened and free. Stage 3. Birth of the authentic self. But Jung also wisely warned about what he called the integration temptation, the powerful urge to revert to old, familiar patterns when confronted with others' discomfort with your new, healthy boundaries. He understood that true growth demands unwavering commitment to your truth, even when others exert pressure, consciously or unconsciously, for you to return to your former, diminished self. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For empaths, this means recognizing that the who you truly are encompasses both your boundless capacity for compassion and your undeniable right to exist fully, completely, and unapologetically. If you've realized your empathy is a choice, not an obligation, then you choose when to care. And that conscious choice makes it infinitely more powerful. Jung understood that the integrated empath becomes a radiant beacon for others, not through self-sacrifice, but through profound self-realization. Stage 4. Integration and service. The empath is indeed just the child who was never allowed to be selfish. But now, you profoundly understand what Jung truly meant. Your empathy isn't a flaw. It's a testament to your magnificent, yet unfinished, development. You learn to wield your sensitivity as an ingenious survival tool, instead of cultivating it as a conscious, deliberate choice. Jung showed us that the path forward isn't about becoming less empathic, it's about becoming consciously empathic. When you successfully complete the individuation process, you don't merely become resilient, you become a living, breathing source of resilience and inspiration for others. Your profound willingness to walk through the fire of psychological transformation gives others the implicit, powerful permission to embark on their own similar journeys. You don't have to choose between caring for others and caring for yourself. Jung's profound individuation process illuminates the path, showing you precisely how to integrate both into a state of beautiful psychological wholeness. The child who was never allowed to be selfish can, and will, grow into the magnificent adult who consciously chooses when and how to bestow their extraordinary gifts upon the world. Your sensitivity is, without a doubt, a superpower, but only when it emanates from a place of deep strength rather than mere survival, from conscious choice rather than unconscious compulsion, from radiant wholeness rather than lingering woundedness. Jung spent his life proving that the most genuinely empathic people are those who have bravely learned to empathize with themselves first. After 6 agonizing years of psychological hell, something truly miraculous unfolded for Carl Jung. The tumultuous chaos within him began to organize itself, like the universe finding its rhythm after a primal burst. The terrifying visions, once harbingers of madness, started communicating profound wisdom. The overwhelming emotions, once destabilizing, revealed their hidden alchemical purposes. Jung did not merely recover from his breakdown, he emerged as an utterly transformed human being, imbued with insights that would forever revolutionize the understanding of the human psyche. But this profound transformation did not happen overnight, nor was it a passive experience. Jung discovered that psychological resurrection follows a specific, sacred pattern, a journey that anyone grappling with a breaking point can learn to consciously navigate. He called this the process of psychological death and rebirth, and understanding its distinct stages is absolutely crucial for anyone who yearns to build an unshakable, authentic resilience from the ashes of their old life.